Good morning. We're learning as Chutz B'Fur Shlema for Ilana Chaya B'Serach. We're on the top of Mem Aleph Amad Aleph, and just to again set the stage of what we're talking about, we had quoted the Brisa in support of Rav Papa that I almost feel like I should go over the Machlekes Rav Papa and Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak because that's going to come up again later. I guess Dailutzara B'Shaitei. But we brought the Brisa of Asa Kasha Asa Matam Elapal Rabbis Pari Mikum L'Chol Masha Avavinian Divri Rebbe. Rabbi Shmuel had said that you don't need the pasuk, and that was the raya to Rav Papa. That it's telling you that the Par Yom Kippurim also has the din of the Es, B'dam, and V'taval. These three extra limudim that they're also going to apply to the Par Yom Kippurim, not just to the Par Helm Davish Tzibur. Now there's a lot of confusion in Rashi, and it comes up often whether this is being learnt. The Es, B'dam, and V'taval is all by the Par Kohen Mashiach. It's not by Par Helm Davish Tzibur, but we learned them out with the Hekesh. We makish the two of them together. So we're saying Va'asa Kasher Asa could be directly referring to the Par Kohen Mashiach that you're learning it out from there. But just a notation. But in any case, Rabbi Shmuel had disagreed. He said a kal v'chaymer ma makushal hushva carbon lekarbon hushva masam lemaisa makushal carbon lekarbon edin sheishva masam lemaisa, and the Gemara gave all sorts of possibilities about what would be the example of where you mashva carbon to another carbon that doesn't have the same, it's not from the same kind of animal, and yet it still has the same dinim, to tell us this din that we should learn out, let's learn out Es, B'dam, and V'taval from Par Kohen Mashiach or Par Helm Davish Tzibur to Par Yom Kippurim, which is the same din, which is the same animal. So he answered, I'm sorry. It's talking about the Kal V'chaymer would be from the Par Helm Davish Tzibur and the Shalosh Yom Kippurim, that they both have the same animal. They're different animals in the same dinim, and certainly if over there they have the same dinim. So too by our case of Par Yom Kippurim could be learned from Par Helm Davish Tzibur. Don't worry, Rafal, we were just reviewing yesterday's. We didn't even get up to where we got up to yet. So also Par Yom Kippurim le'es badam. So we say, V'asu Rabbi Shmuel says, V'asu Par Yom Kippurim le'es badam u'tfil Par Kohen Mashiach. So, and we said a second din. Once we said that Kal V'chaymer, we just concluded that Rabbi Shmuel says you learn out from a Kal V'chaymer rather than from the pasuk, from Par. But also because Rabbi Shmuel says that Lepar is going to tell you Par Helm Davish Tzibur, which is going to be the next question. What does that mean? You use the pasuk of Par Helm Davish Tzibur to teach you Par Helm Davish Tzibur. But in the meantime, we're still talking about this Kal V'chaymer. We say a second in V'asi Le Sar Yom Kippurim, the Sar Yom Kippurim, which is you're not going to be able to learn it out from Par Helm Davish Tzibur because it's different animals. So you're not going to have that Kal V'chaymer. But according to Bishmal, you could also learn it out. Since Ira Avodas Kechavim are learned out, also there's a Hekesh. We were Makesh. Sira Avodas Kechavim was put into the same bucket with the Par Kohen Mashiach and the Par Helm Davish Tzibur. So we know that it also going to have the din of Es, B'dam, and V'taval, and that will also bring it to the Sar of Yom Kippurim. In fact, the Gemara of Chidavar Alam B'Hekesh Chayzu Malam the Kal V'chaymer. How could you say this? This L'chayr is problematic. How could you go and take something that was learned with a Hekesh and go say with a Kal V'chaymer? This is a restriction in Kachim that one cannot, davar halamid b'hekesh can't be malamed with a hekesh. This is a second question. It's not that I think everyone agrees that you can't be chayzer malamed b'hekesh. The question is, can you go be chayzer malamed b'kal v'chayim? So that's what the Gemara is questioning. Is it that's what you're doing over here? You're saying the sire of Sira Avodas Kechavim is learned out with a hekesh, and then you want to learn out from that to the sire of Yom Kippur. Amar Papa Kasavaton the baby Shmuel davar lam behekesh chayzer malamed b'kal v'chayim. Einachanami, he holds that that's not problematic. We don't extend the rule of davar shalom behekesh einachayzer lam behekesh to a kal v'chayim. It's not problematic to relearn, to double, to go from a kal v'chaymer, from a hekesh to a kal v'chaymer. So now we're going to go back to, as I've mentioned a couple of times, to Rabbi Shmuel said, therefore, he said the lepar is not telling you Yom Kippur, because we're going to learn that out from a kal v'chaymer. So he said instead, lepar, zepar halam davar shel tzibur. What does it even mean? We're saying, you're learning out from par helm davar shel tzibur to par helm davar shel tzibur, but it's the same thing. That's the pasuk that we're talking about. Amar Papa mishum boy igmuri par helm davar shel tzibur b'yeseres ushtei kloyes l'sira avodas kechavim. There's an additional din that we want to learn out from par helm davar shel tzibur, which is the din of yeseres ushtei kloyes. That this is we know that the emurim, the chelev of the carbon is brought on, that's part of the avodah, right? That's the part that's not ma'akev. After you did the whole avodah sadam, certain chelev of the carbon goes on to the mizbeach hachitzon and is burnt up. But legabe these chatoyis pnimius, there's an additional emurim, which is the yeseres, which is I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's something that's next to, I think, the kidneys, ushtei kloyes, and the two kidneys, those also are included atypically together with the emurim. So we want to learn that out from par helm davar shel tzibur. It's that we have that din by par helm davar shel tzibur to sira avodas kechavim. But the problem is, par helm davar shel tzibur begufa leiksiv. We don't have, the pasuk doesn't say by par helm davar shel tzibur the yeseres ushtei kloyes. So we have to learn it behekesha. We learn it out from a hekesh, which I believe the hekesh is from Parkoy and Mashiach. I'm not sure if it's Parkoy and Mashiach or if it's from Sirei, from Yom Kippur. I think it's from I think it's from Parkoy and Mashiach. So paral davar shel tzibur begufa leiksiv bekeshi yasi. It comes from a hekesh. So they're going to have a problem that it's a davar lamed behekesh chayzer lamed behekesh to tell you that this din will also apply to the sira avodas kechavim. So itzich lepar lemehevi command chsiv begufay. By having a second limud lepar, which also is makesh the par, I think the par kohen gadol with the par davar shel tzibur. So then this is going to be not a davar alamed behekesh, but it's going to be a davar alamed b'shtei hekeshim. We're doubling the hekesh to par helam davar shel tzibur. But lahavi davar alamed behekesh chayzum lamed behekesh, and that will take away the problem of davar alamed behekesh chayzum lamed behekesh. So. So that's the reason. That's when it says lepar helam davar shel tzibur. It doesn't mean it's teaching you a din of par helam davar. What it means is it's being makish. It's being makish the din again, in order that we could be able to be chayzer malamed it by having a double hekesh. It makes it as if it was lamad directly. So Tanya kavasadir papa. So now the Gemara is going back to Reb Papa. So Reb Papa, I'm sorry, this is what Reb Papa was the one who just said, that we are doubling the limud in order that we should be able to learn the din of the yeseres ushtei kloyes. There's a lot of Reb Papas. Many of the things that we said here are Rapapa. Taik was the Rapapa, just like we just said. But also kasher also, the pasuk says, also lapar kasher also lapar chatas. Ken yasa loy b'chibar lehem hakohen v'nisach lehem. Sorry, it's hard for me to see the Rashis because there's only Gemara I could find and it's very small. What is V'asa kasha asa matam lepar? Lefishenemar. It says V'asa kasha asa. So what does it have to also say lepar? We already said you should do as you're supposed to. What does it have to say lepar also? Lefishenemar. So the answer is, since it says V'hei meviu es karban isha lashem, which the whole pasuk is B'chibar hakohen al kol adas b'nei Yisrael v'nischalchem kishgagehi v'hei meviu es karbanam isha lashem v'chatasam v'nei Hashem al shegagasam. Chatasam we say elu sir avodas gechavim. Shegagasam ze param davar shel tzibur. This is the chatasam is a reference to in this pasuk is to sirei avodas gechavim, and shegagasam is a param davar shel tzibur. Chatasam al shegagasam. Amr chatas Amr Torah when it says Isha Hashem chatasam l'shem al shegagasam. What is it? Putting the two things together. Amr Torah chatasam harei l'cha keshegagasam. It's saying that the param davar shel tzibur is like the sar of Yom Kippur. Shegasam ehechan lamadata. Where do we know shegasam, which is we just said
Yom Kippur or the avodas gechavim?
I'm sorry, right. Sirei avodas gechavim. So shegasam ehechan lamadata. Where do we know the param davar shel tzibur? Leiba kesha. Wasn't it learned out behekesh? This is again the Yeseris and Shtei Kloyes. So how do we know by param davar shel tzibur? Chadavar alam behekesh chayzam lam behekesh. Tamam loy melapar zeh param davar shel tzibur. That's so since it says lapar, that's talking about the param davar shel tzibur, and lapar zeh par kohen Mashiach. We have psukim that we have a second hekesh that also is going to put together the par kohen Mashiach together with the par param davar shel tzibur. So again, we're saying the same part. This is just what Rav Papa said, that you're doubling the hekesh in order that it could tell you the sirei avodas gechavim. Amar chatasam elu sirei avodas gechavim. We said that chatasam is telling you sirei avodas gechavim. Typically mikra kama. What do we need? Chatasam. If you remember all the way back when we went through the brisa in the first place. I don't know. It's hard to find it. I think it's on Daf Lamed Tes. Tan Rabbanon on Lamed Tes now. Also kasha asa ma ba Lamed lichva ba azas limit please. So it come only eleman shav. Tamad Lamed v'chein yasel parza Yom Kippurim. Kasha lepar zeh par kohen Mashiach. Chad zeh u'siyah v'zchav b'yachad nimarba. So what is he talking about? Amar Abba. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Tanya was a papa. Amar chatasam elu sirei gechavim. Typically mikra kama the Amar hachatas l'rabba sirei gechavim. That what do we need chatasam? But we already said hachatas is coming to be marba sirei avodas gechavim. What do you need chatasam and hachatas to tell you sirei avodas gechavim? Amar papa. We need both of them. That which we said, hachatas, which I tried to find the Gemara earlier, but I couldn't. Where we were makish it, so I would have thought, maybe it's only the hazois that are actually written in the pasuk. Even though we said we learned it out with a double hekesh, nevertheless, I might say it still is not the same thing as something that is already learned, like the hazoyas, like we learned the first hekesh for. Emaloi kamash malan. Rotaisus really asked this question. Tema Amrit Lapar Maisi Lahachi Lamahavi command the Kasa Begufi like Muritz Yois Kechavim. The Toysim is Shemi Lav Hachakesha the Chatasam Mashidasam Lehavadarish Lehachi. He says, if we wouldn't have had this second pasuk, maybe we wouldn't have darshened it to double the pasuk, to double the hekesh. Okay. So now we have to go back again. We have to talk about what does Rashi say? Amalei Rav Huna Breder of Nasan Rav Papa. He's answering the original machlokes. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time because there's too many pages in I got stuck with the art scroll and it's too hard to find things in it. So we had the machlokes on Mem Amud Aleph between Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak and Rav Papa, where we said Lepar ze Yom Kippurim l'may hilchasa. What do we have the Lepar for Yom Kippurim? What is it telling you? Ilak Pshita chukasebe. So Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak and Yitzchak Rav Yehuda Dama Kiksi v'chuka advar manasim b'gdei lam b'fnim. Right, that he said it's talking about the lifnai v'lifnim in the kachay kachim. Avodvar manasim b'gdei lam b'chot siktem ma'asel chaver masha asa asa emek kisidron le'ma'akli azois nami le'ma'akli kamashmalan. That's what it's coming to tell you. So the chukah is coming to tell you something else. So we don't know that the hazois are ma'akli. So maskul or papa umi matzus amar hachi. Can you really say this? So Atanya b'chilim akapas akadim keep a kilev and loy keep a loy kilev divrei b'yeh. Akiva amalei Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says himself, he says you should darshan it the other way around. So there, that Papa said, so Rav Papa said, it's therefore he disagrees with Nachman bar Yitzchak. It's not. We do have imkila keeper imleikila keeper that tells you, according to Rav Yehuda, that it's ma'akev. So you couldn't say that it's to tell you with the kasidron like ma'akri, like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak wanted to say. So therefore, Rav Papa says we need it for a different limud. So Amalei Rav Huna Breder of Nasan Rav Papa. He says that, but we said the Parya Kippurim. We said in this brisa that the Parya Kippurim is being nidma for everything, and that should include even the three the taval and bedam and es. So why are you saying that you need a separate limud, a separate hekesh, not a hekesh, a separate limud, a separate pasuk, a ribui, to tell you those three things? So the Gemara, so
Rashi says, "Almakula milsi yalach b'nei ba'afili kuva," meaning isn't he talking about because wasn't the machlokes in other words?
Almakula milsi yalach b'nei ba'afili kuva. He's saying that why were you objecting to what we said before, that it's coming to tell you
that all four hazars are ma'akev?
His Rav Papa's taina on Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was it's not necessary to tell you the zrika. But we have a raya over here, the record that says it is necessary. It is saying for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Zak Gemara Tanohi. Taka it's a machlokes tanaim. Tandabe Rabbi, Tandabe Rav Marbi Hachi. They learn one way. Tandabe Rishma loy Marbi Hachi. They don't agree with that ribui of what we said. Parya Mekimul Chomasha Amar Benyan. Tandabe Rabbi Yishmael Neimanem Yasser Shtei Kleis B'Parkei Mashiach V'Lei Never Param Davar Shel Tzibur. What now? We're going to say what's the svar of it. The Torah Rabbi Yishmael explains why was the Taka said Yeser Shtei Kleis was said by Parakoi Mashiach, and we had to learn it out with the limud to tell you about Param Davar Shel Tzibur. Why did the Torah Taka do it that way? Mashal Melch Basav Adam Shazal Ma'aloy Havay. So it's the reason why is because it's similar to a melech who's angry at his friends, and therefore, he tries to minimize his anger or his tinus on them because they're his friends. So the same thing, we don't say Yeser Shtei Kloyos, which is part of which is part of an extra detail of how to bring a carbon to be mechaper on an oven. We'd rather do it on the Par Koyin Mashiach, which is just an individual, as opposed to doing it by Paral Davar Shel Tzibur, which is the Gans Klal Yisrael doing an Avera. So essentially the point is the Rebbe Shalom wanted to minimize how much he talks about the Paral Davar Shel Tzibur, which is a chet of the Gans Klal Yisrael. The time of the Rebbe Yishmael, Mipnei Ma Nemra Paroiches HaKodesh, B'Par Koyin Mashiach, V'lei Nemra B'Param Davar Shel Tzibur. Another detail that was said B'Davka by Param Davar, by Par Koyin Mashiach as opposed to Param Davar, is that the dam has to be thrown toward the Paroiches HaKodesh, and we learn it out with a Hekesh. Again, Mashal HaMelech B'Asav Dam Shesarcha Alav Medina, his whole Medina got rebelled on him. Imiyuta Sircha Pamal Yishaloi Miskayemes. If it's only part of them that rebel, then his king will survive. And Riba Sircha Ein Pamal Yishaloi Miskayemes. But if most of them are rebelling, then it's a problem. So therefore, again, this is it's really another version of the first mashal. It's addressing, it's a different way of saying the same thing, that we'd rather talk about Par Koyin Mashiach rather than Param Davar Shel Tzibur, because Param Davar Shel Tzibur is Rubai Shel Klal Yisrael, and he doesn't like to talk about the Rubai Shel Klal Yisrael being doing something wrong. Zok the Gemara. We're on Mem Aleph on base by the two dots. Tnan Hasam. Pigel b'kaimitz v'loy b'levayna v'loy b'kaimitz. Okay, so we should really go back to our Mishnah for a minute. At the end of our Mishnah, we first said we talked about the chatas chitzonius, and we had the machlokes beishamai beis Hillel, and then we said at the end on the Zok Mishnah, kol nitlam mizbeach hapnimi, whatever all hazoyis on the place of shem chiser achsam hametanis kiloi keeper. If you're missing any of the hazoyis, you're not going to get a kapara, right? We said all four hazoyis are necessary. We've been talking about that for the last week or so. You have to have all four hazoyis, they're all ma'akav. Lefikach nothing cool and katikna. If you do all of them in the proper way, va'achas shaloi katikna, and one improperly, psula v'ein by karas. It's going to be possible, and there's not going to be karas, because you have to do all four of them with pigel in order for it to be, since all of them are ma'akav, they all have to be with pigel. So we're going to see, the Gemara is going to define exactly what it means katikna and shaloi katikna, and what's the point here.
What's the lefikach?
No. What do we mean when we say that if you do achas katikna and if you do all of them katikna and one shaloi katikna, what is the reason for this? That means we just said sort of in the Mishnah that we hold ein mefaglam b'chatzi mata. We're saying you can't have pigel when you did all four, but it's a little more complicated than that. As we're going to see, it's a little bit of a machlokes about what's going on here. So let's just hold the words in our head and try to apply what the Gemara says. Tan Hasam, pigel b'kaimitz v'loy b'levayna. If someone had a machshavas pigel in the kaimitz and not in the levayna, so let's remind ourselves of how menachos work. Menachos are parallel to our karbanos. That instead of a shchita, you do a kmitza. The kohen takes with his fingers from the flour, and then he does kabbalah, he puts it in a kli and haylach, and he brings it to the mizbeach, and then on the mizbeach he burns the silas, the flour that he took in the kaimitz, together with some levayna. They both have to be burnt on the mizbeach, and that burning is similar. It's parallel to the zrika that we do by a carbon, the zrikas hadam. Right, so the kmitza is similar to the shchita, and the burning of the kaimitz together with the levina is the similar to the zrikas dam, which is the final machap. So we say, what happened if someone's pigel b'kaimitz b'lay b'levina? He only took the flour from the kmitz, but he didn't do the levina as well. Or b'levina b'lay b'kaimitz. Rebbe Aimer pigel v'chayv and alav kares. Nevertheless, it's going to be pigel and you're going to be chayv kares. V'cham aim by kares achivaga b'chol amata. Chum say no. Like we've said, we've talked about this concept of mafaglam b'chatzi mata, which we always have to denote that this is distinct from what we talk about. You can have a machshavas pigel in one of the avodas, but you can't have within a single avodah that you only had a machshavas pigel in part of that avodah. It has to be in the whole avodah. So in the zrika, it has to be on the entire. Let's say in the shchita, if you had, let's say, on half of the shchita, machshavas pigel, it wouldn't be chayiv kars. So the same thing over here. Amr of Shimon Lakish. Rav Shimon Lakish says it's not quite the way I have just described it. So what Rav Meir seemed to say, you could be mechayiv for just having on either the kaimitz or on the levina. So it seems like he's saying you could be mefagel b'chatzi mata. So time of the Meir because I'm mefagel b'chatzi mata. That's incorrect. We're talking when he says pigul b'kaimitz b'lay b'levina, it means that he first had a machshavas pigul on the first one of those two things, and then he did the other one where he didn't say anything. He did it stam. So the point is not that he had a machshavas not pigul. He had no machshava at all. He didn't say I'm doing it for the right time. He just didn't say anything when he did the second. Kasavar. And Rameya holds that his point is that it still is, he's being mefagel b'chol hamatir, because even though he didn't say anything, since on the first thing he said, machshavas pigul, that carries over to the second part that he did, shaloi b'machshava, which he didn't say anything. So, because we say, since he stated his machshava on one part, that carries over to the next. How do we know that this is the correct interpretation of Rameya? Why are we saying over there in Menachos that the reason why Rameya says if you had a machshava in one of the two parts of the nesinas, of the haktaras, the kaimitz and the levina, that it's going to be a pigul? Why are we saying that it's bedafka because he holds kolais al das rishayna, as opposed to saying it's because he holds mafaglam b'chatzi mata? Maybe he holds in general. There's no problem. As long as you have a machshavas pigul in part of a matter, that's enough. He says no. It comes from our Mishnah. Mediktani from our Mishnah. Diktani lefikach emnasan kulin ketiknan ba'achas shaloi ketiknan pasal ve'em beikaris. The Gemara's understanding that our Mishnah is talking about the same type of case where he did one of the zrikas of the chatas pnimi, which all of the zrikas are ma'akev, and if you did one of them ketiknan, he did it without a machshavas pigul. He did the first three all properly, and one he did with a machshavas pigul. Possible in bekaris, it's not going to have a din karis because all of them are ma'akev. But it's mashma. It would be the other way around. If he did the first one with a losson with the machshavas pigul, but kulan ketiknan pigul, it would be pigul. It would be medayik that if it was the reverse, that he first had a machshavas pigul in one part, and then the rest of them ketiknan, meaning we're understanding that to mean b'shtika, then it would be pigul, money. Ilay merabanan. If you say it's Rabbanan Ami, Rabbanan ain't mefagel b'chatzi mater. Rabbanan said you're not mefagel b'chatzi mater, and we don't care about. According to Rabbanan, they don't say that your machshava rishayna is das rishayna. So that he's continuing whatever his first machshava was. So they wouldn't agree that even if you had a machshava in the first one, shaisik on the rest, that it would be pigul. Ela Rameya. Your time of the Rameh, Mishum the Fag B'chatzi Mater, who I feel is Tani Nami. If the reason for a Rameh is because he holds you could always be Fag B'chatzi Mater, then even in the case where we were saying where he had a machshava shaloi katikna on the first three, and then a machshava. I'm sorry, he had a machshava katikna on the first three, and then a machshava shaloi katikna on the last one. Machshava's pigel on the last one. He should still say it should be pigel because you are mafagel on part of the matter. So it must be that his reasoning is al das rishayna and not because of mefagel and bechatzi mater as a more general rule. Amar Shmuel Yitzchak disagrees. No, really, our Mishnah is going like the Rabban. If that's the case, how could it be like we had the problem? How are we going to understand the diuk that's mashma that if it would be the other way around, it would be pigel if he had first a machshavas pigel and then a shaloi, and then he had a machshava shaloi katiknan. So he says, "My katiknan lepigel." He turns it upside down. He says the lashon in the Mishnah of katiknan is not like we were saying that shaloi katiknan is he had a machshavas pigel, and then katiknan is shtika. Rather, he says katiknan is a lashon he has machshavas pigel. So the Mishnah is saying that if he had a machshava nasan kulin katiknan, meaning he had all the first three was a lashon with a machshavas pigel, and then even the last one is not a machshavas pigel, then it's going to be, he's still going to only be mechayiv, he's going to be puzzle, but ain bakaris. Practically mara, having miktani lefikach and nasan kulin katiknan v'achashalei katiknan puzzle v'ain bakaris b'chlal the tikna lech sheirahu. The Gemara asked, but how could that be? For the fact that we said I can understand you say katiknan means a lashon pigel, but shaloi katiknan is mashma. Tikna is where he had a machshavas of not having it to be. He had a machshava to do it properly. So if that's the case, how could you say if he had a machshava first to do it properly? That so what is he saying? Pigel. Let's see the Rashi. Katiknul pigel. Harishayna shemachshavas the chutz lezmanei. Hashvin delay. I mean al das rishayna asa. Praktimarva hamegdani achashalei katiknul v'leik kulon asa. His problem is if you for the fact that we said mektani shalei katikna. And it didn't say, it should just say kulon katiknan, chutz me'achas. It should say kulon katiknan. And one, he did. Or achas b'shtika, or he should have said one b'shtika. Shema mina katiknan da'amal hachshirayhu. Di b'machshavas ulepigel, heichin mikla lahach d'shtika, shalai katiknan, halei chasher bambidi. Like kilka machshavta b'shayna nekraya shalai katiknan lepigel. It doesn't make sense that shalai katikna would be lishtika, like we're trying to say, but rather would mean that he has a machshava, a different machshava. Amarava, so Rav answers, "My shaloi katikna ein echanami. My shaloi katikna is chutz l'mkaimai. Rasha shaloi l'shmai. Ein echanami. Shaloi katikna doesn't mean lishtika. It means he has the machshava. You're even dying that it doesn't make sense to say if it says shaloi katikna, how could katikna be a machshavas pigel, then the lashon shaloi katikna doesn't make sense. You should say b'shtiko. You should say kulan except for one is katiknan. He says no, because when we say shaloi katiknan, it doesn't mean shtika. It means taka a machshavas psul, a machshavas chutz l'mkaimai or machshavas shaloi l'shmai. So that's miyashiv the lashon according to the way we're answering that it's going according to Rabban. So if that's what it's talking about, it's mashma that only because he had a machshava that's a pasling machshava in the rest of this matter. But if it was just kashtika, he would be potter. If it wouldn't be chutz l'mkaimei chutz l'shmai, it would taka be pigel. So tomorrow, no. I did turn a ratio pigel b'chayim of karas. Since in the ratio, in the first part of the Mishnah, when we talk about the chatoyis chitzonius, we said pigel v'chayim lav karas. Tanami sefer pasel ve'ein by karas. So we also use this lashon pasel ve'ein by karas. pigel v'chayvel and cars, we said pasul v'ein bar cars, but ein achanami, if it wouldn't have had, even if it wouldn't have been chutzum kaimai or lishmai, it would still be pasul v'ein bar cars.
That seems a little bit of a stretch, no?
What do you mean?
You said lashon possibly in cars, but we didn't mean it.
Well,
Is that it's
No.
not pivotal, and it's not a problem. We're saying possibly in cars just was willing to keep it.
Let's see Rashi. I did on Rashi chayv pigel v'chayv cars. So I say for pasul v'ein cars. Lo garsina ela klaima la oilam katikna la pigel. Lo garsina chutzum kaimai. Whether namidim nosam b'shtika loy pigel. The din would also be if he did a b'shtika loy pigel. V'hayde nakat shaloy katikna. I did on Rashi b'chitzayna nosan es rishayna chutzum zmana v'eshniyah chutzum zmana b'chayv cars. The dafkan off with chutzum kaimai. I mean the revusa. And I have to think about this a little bit more because I'm not really understanding. The truth is that in my mind, I thought it was saying the reason why it said the shniya shaloi katikna. I didn't really focus on this. Okay, we're going to stop over here. I'm going to try to think about it and believe that hopefully